We have already looked at the present active indicative verb form luo or leo, and now it's time to turn quickly to a first major variation of that form, known as contract verbs. A contract verb is a verb whose stem has a particular vowel at the end of that stem, which creates different endings when the verb endings are attached to the stem. There are three sets of contract verbs, and we'll look at just one right now, the other two later on. Have a look at this table here. We are looking at contract verbs like poieo or pieo in modern Greek. These are eo contract verbs. That means that the letter epsilon is at the end of the stem. You see it there, pie. And when we add the verb endings to this we get slightly different forms compared to luo. So let's look at them. The present active indicative first person singular verb of poieo is poio or pio. Now what happens here is the is contracting with the normal omega ending, such as luo, such as we see with luo, but we see this circumflex accent over the top, and that indicates that a contraction has taken place. The present active indicative second person singular is poies, or in modern Greek, piis. The present active indicative third person singular is poie, or pe. Again, notice the circumflex over each of these endings. The present active indicative first person plural is piu men. Now, the difference there is we've got u men instead of o men with the omicron alone when we compare it with luo. The present active indicative second person plural form is pi te. Again, you've got epsilon iota with a circumflex instead of just epsilon, tau epsilon. The present active indicative third person plural form is pu sin. So, with these contract verbs, we need to remember that there is a circumflex over each one which indicates the contraction, and that these forms are created by combining the epsilon at the end of the stem pie with the verb endings we learnt for luo or leo. Now, you could memorize this table just as it is. A number of verbs are eo contract verbs, and that would work fine. Or you could learn the rules of contraction, which we'll turn to now. The rules of contraction help us to generate that conjugation for poieo that we've just seen, if all you know is the luo verb table. In other words, if you know the luo verb table and the rules of contraction, you can put those two things together and generate the poieo conjugation. Two rules for eo verbs. The epsilon at the end of the stem of the verb drops out with the addition of long vowels, omega and ita, and it drops out with diphthongs, epsilon iota and omicron ipsilon. Okay, so in other words, the disappears and we don't see it in the form when these letters are in the regular verb endings. The second rule, the epsilon forms new diphthongs with the addition of short vowels. So epsilon plus omicron becomes becomes that diphthong omicron ipsilon. Right, so the epsilon at the end of the stem combines with the omicron, which is in the verb ending, to create this diphthong. Also, epsilon plus epsilon becomes this diphthong here. So if that's unclear, then refer again to the chart that we just saw, and you can work through these and see how these rules of contraction are at work. So take poio. Well, the regular verb ending for the first person singular is O, it's omega, like luo. When the O is combined with the epsilon stem, the epsilon disappears. We still know that there's a contraction, however, because of the circumflex accent over the omega. On the other hand, let's find a good example. Down here, the first person plural, piu men, normally that would be o men. So lu o men for a regular verb. But here we see that the omicron from the o men regular ending has combined, it has contracted with the epsilon of the pieo verb stem and created a new diphthong, this omicron epsilon diphthong. So as I mentioned, you can either learn this table by rote or learn these rules of contraction. In actual fact, you're better off if you do both.